One day, we might see a Ferrari with 4 seats, but in the meantime, there's always Maserati's Quattroporte. A large and very prestigious saloon, with the heritage and sense of spirit missing from its German rivals, it offers a very Latin take on luxury. Creating the equivalent of a 4-door Ferrari is no easy undertaking, and it's taken Maserati nearly half a century to perfect their Quattroporte model, the Italian for 4-door. Now this is the 5th generation Quattroporte, and in truth it's the only one to have really hit the mark. Things started promisingly enough with a gorgeous Frua design model back in 1963. Now this was inspired by a boom in motorway building that occurred back in the late 50s, and that car was loved by a whole new generation of buyers who wanted a sumptuously elegant, rapid but very effective means of long-distance ground transportation. It wasn't that involving to drive, however, and in their efforts to combine litheness with luxury, Maserati rather lost their way in the subsequent 3 generations of Quattroporte model that we saw over the next 3 decades. Italian prime ministers ignored the quirky looks and patchy build quality, but other boardroom level potential customers generally bought powerful BMW 7 Series and Mercedes S-Class alternatives instead, until 2004 and the launch of this car. Now, despite a £140 million design budget, it certainly wasn't perfect to start with some initial teething quality problems and the fact that early buyers were restricted to the single choice of a clunky Duo Select automated manual gearbox. By 2008, however, and the launch of this mildly facelifted version, those issues had been largely sorted. The cars were now beautifully screwed together, and most customers now went for the choice of the silky 6-speed ZF automatic gearbox that suited the needs of a much wider cross-selection of buyers. Perfection doesn't come easily, you see, but it's worth waiting for. Once you've turned the key, heard the starter rumble and felt the V8 engine borrowed from Maserati's Gran Turismo Coupe spring into life, this power plant settles down into a more subdued, yet still meaningful rumble. Now, if there's a better sounding engine in the world, then I can't think of it right now. It comes either in 4.2 litre 400 brake horsepower form, or in 4.7 litre 425 brake horsepower guise, or if you're set on sacking the chauffeur, as a 433 brake horsepower 4.7 litre V8. There's no turbo diesel, of course, that would be very un-Maserati, nor would that give you the glorious soundtrack you'll enjoy as you sail up towards the rev limiter, 60 flashing by from rest in just 5.4 seconds on the way to a top speed of 174 miles an hour in this S model. It walks the walk as well as talking the talk, this car too. You simply don't expect a Mercedes S-Class or BMW 7 Series sized luxury saloon to be able to attack corners in the way that this one can. Now, superb body control plays a big part in this. The Maserati's adaptive dampers sensing body movement and reacting instantly to keep the car steady through the corners with eager turning. You can't really go too far wrong whichever Quattroporte model you choose. That is, unless you make the mistake of going for the entry-level version with the Duo Select gearbox. This automated manual setup works fine if you manipulate it via the lovely paddles behind the steering wheel, but left in automated drive mode, it struggles to move this Maserati in the smoothly dignified way you'd expect from an £80,000 luxury saloon. Which is why the majority of customers go for the fully automatic version with its front rather than rear mounted ZF gearbox. Now, your workshop will be able to identify this with the different coloured cam covers, but the only difference you'll really notice, given that it has the same 6-speed paddle shift arrangement, is the lack of jerky progress when you leave the thing to its own devices. Is it really possible to create a car that's as exciting to drive as it is relaxing to be driven in? 2 cars in one. After a day stressing yourself in the kind of business pursuits that enable the purchase of something like this in the first place, the Quattroporte in theory offers a couple of ways to unwind. Depending on your mood, you may choose to forget the day's hassles by flicking up and down the paddle shift gearbox to the tune of a crackling, rumbling V8 at full chat. Or maybe you might prefer to relax by reclining here in the rear. Depending on the options boxes you've ticked, you can there be experiencing a seat massage, watching a DVD, or enjoying a drink chilled in a centre storage cabinet and resting on a pull-out wooden picnic table. And as a piece of design, well, this is the first Pininfarina penned Quattroporte, and it certainly won't suit if you want to hide your wealth under a bushel. Quite apart from the arresting looks, this car is seriously lengthy, with an unusually long nose contributing in no small part to a total length of over 5 metres. This car is longer than a BMW 7 Series, wider than a Mercedes S-Class and lower than a Jaguar XJ. Despite this, it offers a relatively small 450 litre boot. That's 10 litres less than you get in a compact BMW 3 Series. The shape restricted by the size and positioning of the large 90 litre fuel tank. At least the cabin is large enough for both front and rear seat passengers to stretch out in comfort. Although thanks to this prominent centrally mounted transmission tunnel, it's not really designed for 3 at the back. The chassis is a clean sheet design with this classic longitudinally mounted engine driving the rear wheels. Now, as for the most recent changes, well, you've got these smart LED strip lights front and rear, and this revised grille with its vertical slats sitting above reshaped bumpers. Now, list prices suggest that you'll pay between £80,000 and £90,000 for this car, and there's a hefty £6,000 premium if you want the 4.7 litre engine above the entry-level 4.2 litre unit. Either way, the asking figures sound a lot. They are a lot until you look around at the obvious competition. Maserati offers a choice of V8 engines with this car. There's a 400 horsepower 4.2 litre unit for the entry-level model, and this 4.7 litre V8 with 425 brake horsepower in the S version that I've been driving here. You can also get this unit with 433 brake horsepower in the Sport GTS variant. Now, what about rivals? Well, as an alternative to this Maserati, you could opt for a slightly cheaper BMW 750i or Mercedes S500. On paper, those cars can match this car's space, speed and luxury. On the road, it's a different story. The aural and tactile experience that they offer isn't even in the same league. So what else? Well, a BMW M5 would match this car's driver-focused feel, but it's a smaller car and doesn't have the Quattroporte's relaxed gait when you're not in the mood to throw the thing about. An Audi S8, well, that's closer, but it doesn't have this Maserati spirit. Now that only leaves much more expensive super saloons like Porsche's Panamera, Mercedes S65 AMG, or conceivably even much more expensive cars like Aston Martin's Rapide or Bentley's Continental Flying Spur Speed. Whichever Quattroporte variant you go for, you'll be treated to a sumptuous cabin swathed in leather with classy materials and some lovely touches. The general layout of the switchgear isn't quite up to German standards, but it's not far off, and in any case has its own rather unique appeal. Standard equipment includes satellite navigation and a high-end stereo system with rather fiddly buttons that features a 30 gig hard disk, USB interface, and of course Bluetooth hands-free setup for your phone. As you might expect, running a Maserati Quattroporte isn't a job for the terminally short of cash. The Italians quote a rather optimistic combined consumption fuel figure of 19.2 miles to the gallon for the entry-level 4.2 litre version, but perhaps more representative is the 12.9 miles to the gallon urban fuel consumption figure. CO2 emissions vary between 340 and 365 grams per kilometre, suggesting that there's a reason why very few of these cars are ordered in green. There's more bad news in terms of Group 20 insurance, but better news comes in the form of high residuals. Now, you can expect to get 82% of your original investment back after a year and 67% back after 2 years. That suggests that the market agrees with Maserati that these cars are now much better screwed together. If you're going to spend £80,000 to £90,000 on a luxury saloon, then there's a strong argument for getting something unique. Something like this. You can drive it, you can draw up in it, or you can drool over it. For the independently minded boardroom buyer who'd like a classic Italian sports car but needs 4 doors, there's nothing quite like this Maserati. Yes, there are bigger, faster and brasher super saloons, but there's nothing quite so ice cool as a Quattroporte.